Hello YouTube friends, it's great to be here with you again. Dr. Teresa here. We've made it a little bit farther in getting the Seahorse tank ready. You can see that I have the decorations inside there now, and it looks okay. I'll know better if this is going to work once the Seahorses arrive and if some of the things I put in there are going to be stable enough. In the very back I have that giant sea fan that I have adhered to an actual piece of coral to give it stability. And I have artificial plants here with weighted bases. And then here is the piece that I talked about using as a seahorse feeding station. And I've attached another small sea fan to it. Let me go give you a different angle here, so that the seahorses have something to attach to when they're feeding at the feeding station. So this will work pretty well. I'm going to have to be a little bit creative because for the feeding station I was originally going to use a tube that I had pulled out from one of my gravel cleaners, and I thought it was going to be long enough. But when I try, let me move the lid here, when I try to put the tube in here, and this is where the food would go down, you'd put it inside of there and then let it fall into the dish. You can see that to get it all the way down or close to down, I have to get my fingers in the water. Ideally, it shouldn't have to go as deep. So I can look for either a tube that's a little bit longer in my supplies, or I can find a way to lift up the very bottom of the base here. So I'm going to see what will work. I might have something. I actually had another piece that came with this glass container that was part of it, but I didn't include it here because I didn't know how to use it, but maybe I can put it underneath it and it will elevate it a little bit, and that will work. So as far as setting up the tank and getting the decorations in, it's coming along. Again, I'm keeping a bare bottom just because that's going to be the easiest to maintain and clean up. It will be really easy to see when I need to get uneaten food out or waste out. It won't accumulate and get stuck between other substrate, as is typical, and it won't build up very easily. And the reason that's so important is that seahorses are very sensitive. The water has to stay very, very clean and I guess pure for them, because they are very sensitive to water conditions, even invisible pieces that get into the water that you can't see but impact the water start impacting the seahorses, and that's when they start having problems with their buoyancy or not being able to eat their food. They lose what's called their snick ability. Basically, they lose their sucking ability to suck their food in. And then sometimes the males will get swollen pouches that need to be deflated, and those are all signs that water quality is not optimal. And unfortunately, I am speaking from experience. I have kept seahorses in the past. So I'm going to play around with adjusting the height of that feeding dish and see if I can make it work with the tubing that I have. I also wanted to see how far along we were with the water conditions for when we'll be able to purchase the seahorses and add in. I just added the Decor, and you can see the skimmer is skimming nicely, so there might have been some residue on that. Even though I did rinse off the Decor, there might be some residue that's impacting the water quality. So it's really great to know that the skimmer is sensitive enough that it's going to pull out those invisible pieces that could be harmful to the seahorses. The canister filter is working really well, and the thing that I like about the canister filter, in addition to the fact that it's going to give me better filtering power for the seahorses in the smaller tank, is that there doesn't seem to be as much spray and it's not as obtrusive, so it kind of sits in back a little bit more hidden than the hang-on filter. And yes, it's true, the skimmer is a lot more obvious, but I just feel it's going to be really important to keep this very high rated, overly rated skimmer for this tank if I want it to keep up with Seahorses. And I think it's going to do the trick. Like I said, I just added the Decor and already it's really skimming. And as I mentioned before, underneath the aquarium, I have a little container that's catching the skim off from the skimmer. There's a hose that I have attached from the skimmer to the side here. Let me just get back to that angle so you can see a little bit better. And it just goes right down to behind the tank and underneath it. So it's capturing that excess skimming that's coming out and is going beyond the capacity of the skimmer cup. I'm also checking the specific gravity or the level of salt. A little hard to see the color here, but that hydrometer that's in the water, it is right in the range. It's just at the tip of the green area, which is the recommended ideal level for salt level for marine fish, including seahorses. I'm probably going to have to add a little bit of water to the tank, but it'll still be pretty close to that range, and over time I'll add some more salt. And another thing I wanted to look at is the readings. So when I look at the ammonia alert, it is looking very yellow to me right now. And when we checked ammonia last time, it was very low. Still higher than we would like it to be. I think it was 25 parts per million. But definitely way lower than it was than when we had measured it previously. So now that we know that the ammonia is converting over to nitrites. Nitrites is the next phase of conversion of hidden waste of organic matter, and going through the nitrogen cycle process, and the nitrites were really high, and that's because the ammonias were converting over to nitrites. So I didn't bother measuring ammonia at this point. I expect it's going to continue to go down. More importantly, I want to see where the nitrites are, and then my next phase that I want to pay attention to would be the nitrates and then the pH level. But I'm not going to bother with the nitrates or the pH if the nitrates are still high, because all of those other parameters are going to continue to change until the nitrites level off. So I just did another test, and you can see nitrites are still really high. Here's my chart. Nitrites, I want it to get down to 0 or closer to a light blue color. Still pretty heavy purple, so it's either 5 parts per million or higher than that. It might be starting to go down a little bit, but of course it's not even close to where we want it to be. So this is where we left off this time, and so our next steps will check and see how everything is holding up with the skimming, if the nitrites start going down, and then once that happens, we can start making adjustments in the water so we can get closer to ordering the seahorses. And then for next time too, I'm going to see if I can adjust either the height of the feeding station, the object I bought for the feeding station. Again, that was a thrift store purchase for just a couple dollars. And if that doesn't work, I'll see if I can find a tube that's just a tiny bit longer. But otherwise, everything is on the way. We're getting closer. I'm getting excited. I can see with the decor inside the aquarium now that it is looking like a nice little home for seahorses. So it'll be very exciting when we get to the point that we're ready to order them. Thanks so much for following along. I appreciate your viewing today and participating in this journey, this chronicle, so to speak, of preparing for our seahorses. Thank you. See you next time.